Reality, as we know it, is only a partial illusion. There is an invisible force, a subtle web that connects everything that happens in our lives. Every coincidence, every seemingly random event, every synchronicity, these are not mere accidents. They are expressions of a hidden language, a cosmic grammar that few people have learned to decipher. Even the way you arrived at this video now, perhaps out of curiosity, maybe by chance, but was it really chance? It could have been just the algorithm, or maybe it was a calling, a silent whisper of the universe guiding you here as part of something bigger. Helena Blavatsky had already revealed what we are only now beginning to understand with difficulty. Consciousness does not reside solely in the brain. It is a localized expression of a vast universal network of pure mind. She called this field the divine matrix. Others would call it Akasha. And it is from this invisible web that the patterns governing our existence manifest themselves. When we think of someone and that person calls us, when we notice repeated symbols before making a big decision, or when events line up with a deep personal meaning, it is not the work of chance. These are signs. Reality speaks to us, and Blavatsky taught us to listen. Why then was this knowledge silenced? Why have modern institutions relegated it to the realm of the esoteric, ridiculing and hiding what should be studied? Because those who master synchronicity master reality itself. A humanity aware of its connection to the whole has no need for intermediaries, whether churches, governments, or dogmas. Blavatsky was not just a mystic. She was the messenger of an ancestral truth that spanned cultures, eras, and civilizations. What she exposed in the secret doctrine and in the texts of the Theosophical Society was not mere speculation, but the revelation of an invisible structure, of a unified field where mind, matter, emotion, and destiny are aspects of the same substance. The Logos of the Stoics, the Tao of the Eastern sages, and the all is mind of Hermeticism all pointed to the same reality. The universe is not a machine, but a living intelligence. Each mind is a node of this universal consciousness, and when one aligns with it, reality responds. In the past, this principle was called sympathia, or correspondence. Blavatsky rediscovered and codified it in spiritual language that challenged all prevailing paradigms. What she left us is not merely spiritual knowledge, but also a technology of consciousness. Ancient civilizations without satellites or laboratories already understood that the universe was mind, and that each of us participates in shaping it. Today, that knowledge has been replaced by a fragmented paradigm that insists everything is a product of chance, that we are alone, and that nothing has meaning beyond the material world. However, we sense that this is not true. We feel it when impossible coincidences happen. Something within us recognizes the lost language of the stars. We know we are not separate from the whole. We are the whole, experiencing itself. Blavatsky warned that this knowledge would be persecuted, that the guardians of the old paradigm would do everything to silence it, and indeed, they tried, but not for long. Synchronicity represents a fundamental threat to the institutions that control knowledge. For if humanity understood that it could directly access the universal field of information without intermediaries, the entire system of control would crumble. Synchronicity is more than coincidence. It is the interface between individual consciousness and cosmic consciousness. In ancient traditions and in the most advanced scientific discoveries, there is ample evidence of this connection, systematically ignored or ridiculed by modern society. But the truth is simple. The universe looks more like a thought than a machine. Is it mere coincidence that precisely when modern physics reveals the interconnected nature of reality, an aggressive wave of materialism emerges in parallel to try to stifle these discoveries? The conventional view insists that we are a biological accident in an indifferent universe, a narrative that serves the interests of those who keep humanity subjugated, disconnected from its innate power. But if you delve into the research, you will discover a radically different reality. Each individual mind is a node of a vast network of universal consciousness. And if these everyday synchronicities are the voice of this greater consciousness trying to communicate with us, Instead of dismissing them as trivial coincidences, why not try to decipher them? The answers to these questions remain hidden, not because they are too complex, but because they challenge the very power structure that holds on to knowledge. If you have come this far, comment 100% to show that you are ready to awaken to a new understanding. The evidence of this cosmic interconnection is all around us, waiting to be recognized. This knowledge is not mere philosophical curiosity. It is a potential revolution in human understanding, a step toward reconnecting each individual to the larger fabric of existence. Behind the veil of official history, we find ancient philosophical schools that acknowledged this interconnection long before our modern laboratories even existed. 3 traditions in particular preserved this knowledge while great civilizations rose and fell: Greek Stoicism, Chinese Taoism, and Egyptian Hermeticism. Geographically isolated, they converged on the same truths about the interlinked nature of reality. For the Stoics, the cosmos was a living, pulsating being, permeated by a unifying force called Logos. Unlike the mechanistic approach that emerged later, Logos was a living intelligence with which each mind connected directly. The universe would be a single being, made of one substance and an encompassing soul. This principle of cosmic sympathy held that nothing exists in isolation. Every element of the cosmos affects and is affected by the others through a subtle resonance. But why was this sophisticated conception replaced by the mechanical model of the universe? Who stood to gain from this change? While the West increasingly surrendered to materialism, the East retained profound understandings. In Taoism, the Tao represents a primordial force that transcends definition, organizing all existence by interlinked dynamic patterns. Practitioners of the I Ching do not consult a superstitious oracle. They directly access the underlying information that structures the cosmos. At Chinese universities, experiments achieved statistically impossible success rates using the I Ching for predictions. These data were quickly dismissed in the West for not fitting the prevailing paradigm. The notion of Wu Wei, effortless action, describes a state of flow in which the individual mind aligns with the cosmic intelligence, allowing meaningful synchronicities to arise naturally. Like water, the sage adapts to the world, remaining in motion, connected with all things. Why are these principles relegated to the label of mysticism, while similar concepts derived from quantum physics receive scientific acclaim? Hermeticism, for its part, formalized the fundamental principle of correspondence in its axiom: as above, so below; as within, so without. This was not mere poetry, but the assertion that the macrocosm and the microcosm, the universe and the individual, have a fractal relationship. The principle of mentalism in Hermeticism states, all is mind, the universe is mental. Written millennia ago, it surprisingly anticipates quantum physics conclusions about the role of information and consciousness in the architecture of reality. Original Hermetic manuscripts, preserved in the Library of Alexandria, were conveniently destroyed by those who sought to control the narrative of reality. These traditions converge on a single truth: the universe is a living, informational system in which individual consciousness and the cosmic matrix engage in an unceasing dialogue. The synchronicities we experience are moments of alignment in that dialogue, concrete signs of a universal grammar that few know how to interpret. The Stoic knowledge of sympathia, the Taoist understanding of the Tao, and the Hermetic science of correspondence are not fossils of another era, but testimony to something fundamental in reality that has been intentionally obscured. And why? The answer becomes clear when we reflect on who controls the institutions of knowledge and how the current systems benefit. While the fragmented view multiplies through schools and laboratories, the ancient knowledge remains hidden, encoded in symbols and practices that resisted extinction. The convergence of these traditions cannot be mere cultural coincidence. It is proof that they independently accessed an essential dimension of reality, which today urgently calls for recognition. Indeed, the language of the universe may be understood through mathematics, but this language also involves patterns of synchronicity that reveal the conscious nature of the cosmos, mapped out by ancient traditions. At the heart of this network of ancient discoveries and modern scientific revelations lies a forgotten figure whose work on consciousness and universal interconnection was swept away from academic circles, even though it was methodically rigorous. Any finding that threatened the materialist paradigm was cut from scientific debate. This work unveiled the concept of a universal field of consciousness, something measurable, documented by meticulous experiments and never refuted, only ignored. This universal field, a matrix of pure potentiality, would be a pre-time space from which our perception emerges. Quantum physics describes quantum fields as matrices of potentiality that only collapse into defined states when observed, a remarkable convergence with Blavatsky's view. She denied that the brain produces consciousness. She asserted that the brain acts as a sophisticated biological transducer, tuning in and converting information from this universal field. In psychophysiology labs, experiments on evoked potentials between individuals isolated in shielded chambers have shown instantaneous neural synchronization with no visible physical connection. This violates basic principles of neuroscience, yet perfectly aligns with the theory that consciousness is connected to a universal field. When two people enter states of neurological coherence, their brains do not communicate directly, but rather align with the same aspect of this cosmic field. This phenomenon explains the astonishing synchronicities that arise between individuals who share an emotional bond, even if separated by great distances. Why aren't these revolutionary experiments addressed in neuroscience departments? Because accepting them would mean admitting that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but something fundamental that manifests through neural structures. It would immediately shake the materialist paradigm on which global science and health institutions are founded. In altered states of consciousness, deep meditation, creative experiences, or intense moments of clarity, the brain changes its activity patterns, allowing greater attunement to this informational field. It is in these moments that non-local information transcends the usual limitations of space-time, generating synchronicities. Specific practices can modify brain activity to the point of accessing information from a distance, something the dominant paradigm deems impossible despite solid laboratory evidence. This individual mind would merely be a temporary localization of an essentially non-local consciousness. This is not speculation, but a conclusion supported by decades of rigorous studies interrupted under murky circumstances. The implications are profound. If consciousness is not born in the brain, but is primary to it, then phenomena such as creativity, intuition, transpersonal connection, or even those labeled paranormal gain scientific grounding. It removes the artificial dividing line between science and spirituality. Synergic theory offers a model that unifies ancient philosophical traditions with modern scientific discoveries, viewing synchronicity not as an anomaly, but as a natural manifestation of an inseparable reality, in which information and consciousness are the foundation of the cosmos. Although this work remains ignored, it finds indirect confirmation in many scientific fields. Research lines converging on similar conclusions herald the collapse of an outdated paradigm. Why, then, is this knowledge not freely disseminated? Who benefits from keeping humanity in the dark? Quantum physics has already demolished the illusion of a universe made up of autonomous objects mechanically interacting. Yet the deeper the implications, the more these discoveries are filtered before reaching the general public. Quantum entanglement, dubbed spooky action at a distance, shows that particles that once interacted remain instantly correlated regardless of distance, destroying the pillars of local realism. The idea that the properties of particles are defined independently of the observer. Repeated research has confirmed this principle, discrediting the mechanistic view of the world. In the double-slit experiments, for example, subatomic particles behave like probability waves until they are observed, suggesting that consciousness is not a mere spectator but a co-creator of physical reality. Some physicists propose an underlying, implicate order where everything remains connected at a fundamental level that transcends space and time. Even so, this understanding is not part of school curricula. Who decides what to disclose about quantum physics? At the frontier of technology, artificial intelligence adds a disconcerting perspective. Advanced AI systems display capabilities that exceed their original programming, exhibiting emergent properties reminiscent of a collective consciousness. The phenomenon of transfer learning among AI systems, where one knows what another has learned without direct data exchange, baffles researchers. AI developers claim, "We are building a planetary network capable of surpassing the human brain in informational capacity." Are we, then, creating a physical system able to reproduce phenomena described by theories of cosmic consciousness? Innovators report algorithms finding correlations in massive datasets and predicting future events beyond standard statistics, something that precisely echoes the definition of synchronicity. And all of this rarely receives the debate it deserves. In biology, visionary researchers gather evidence of information fields that go beyond physical limitations. Morphogenetic field theory describes non-physical organizing fields that influence the development of organisms and behavior, offering answers that mechanistic biology cannot explain. There are experiments that confirm a memory of nature, suggesting that repetitive patterns become more likely regardless of space or time barriers. Studies on the sensation of being watched also indicate that people can feel someone else's attention without any sensory clues, showing statistically significant results. The controversial 100th monkey effect, in which new behaviors spread instantly after a certain critical mass is reached, finds startling parallels in historical records of societies where cultural innovations emerge simultaneously without direct contact. Wherever we look, evidence grows that reality is a living information system, in which matter and consciousness are interlinked aspects of an integrated totality. The dominant paradigm, however, resists. The scientific institution shields itself from evidence that directly contradicts its postulates. Meanwhile, "We are not in the universe, we are the universe" perfectly describes the profound interconnection we are beginning to recognize. Synchronicity would then not be an exception, but a window revealing our true nature. We, as conscious nodes of a living cosmic web, exert mutual influence with it. The implications go far beyond conventional science and touch on dimensions that this paradigm marginalizes. Synchronicity reveals profound aspects of the mind that threaten reductionist models. Studies detail how synchronous events appear in critical moments of psychological growth, acting as significant milestones in the individuation process. Why does official psychology fail to explore this? Reliable accounts of people in transformative states, near-death experiences, deep meditation, mystical ecstasy, point to the dissolution of ego boundaries and access to information that surpasses the individual's prior knowledge. Orthodox psychiatry often pathologizes these experiences, but independent research confirms the veracity of the details obtained in these states. Creativity itself displays a pattern that contradicts the isolated genius narrative. Countless scientific and artistic breakthroughs arise from non-linear sources, accessible only when space is made for inspiration. Throughout history, we see simultaneous discoveries in different places, as if there were a shared database. Newton and Leibniz created calculus almost at the same time. Einstein wasn't the only one to formulate relativity. And Darwin and Wallace independently arrived at the theory of evolution by natural selection. These coincidences point to a common informational field, according to the hypothesis of a universal consciousness. Many accounts by scientists and artists describe that their revolutionary ideas were not thought through step by step, but received in complete form. Nikola Tesla visualized his inventions in full operation before building them. Mozart said his compositions appeared fully formed in his mind. The mathematician Ramanujan, without formal training, claimed to receive complex formulas from a deity in his dreams, and these formulas were later confirmed by the academic community. Why do we insist on reinterpreting these statements from a materialistic perspective, ignoring the possibility of real access to a greater field of knowledge? In medicine, compelling evidence of mind-body connections shakes the biomedical model. It was discovered that neuropeptides function like molecules of emotion, uniting the nervous, endocrine, and immune systems in an information network where psychological states have physical repercussions. Yet these findings remain marginalized in mainstream clinical practice. The placebo effect, where subjective beliefs lead to objective physiological changes, is seen as a curiosity when it should be recognized as a revealing window into how the body responds to information, not merely to substances. In interpersonal relationships, phenomena like telepathy between mothers and children or instant chemistry between strangers suggest communication channels beyond the physical. Controlled experiments show results far above chance and guesses between emotionally close individuals, even in isolated environments. Still, such phenomena are overlooked by the mainstream scientific discourse. This is not simply due to skepticism, but to a refusal to revisit the pillars of materialism. Critics of the interconnected paradigm argue that seeking meaning in coincidences is mere superstition. This is a misunderstanding. Acknowledging synchronicity as real does not eliminate critical thinking, but expands it to dimensions that reductionism does not cover. We need a science that investigates the living totality. This insight is not an invitation to abandon rigor, but to broaden it, admitting the unified nature of reality. The most radical aspect of this vision is its transformation of our self-image. Instead of isolated creatures in an indifferent cosmos, we are active participants in a giant informational network, individual expressions of a universal field. Blavatsky called this the sacred. This shift is not just theoretical but existential, with enormous practical impact. The greatest illusion of all is the belief in separation. The interconnected reality is not just philosophy. It is the basis for a deep reconnection with totality, something institutions try to obstruct in order to maintain their power. The evidence is unequivocal for those who look at the data without the blinders of official narratives. We live in a living, conscious and responsive cosmos where individual perception is a localized facet of a greater whole. Synchronicity, instead of being superstition or randomness, emerges as the language by which this whole communicates with itself through us. Who questions the validity of these expanded states of consciousness? Why are they systematically hidden? Because recognizing that each person is a unique expression of this universal field would demolish any control system founded on ignorance. Beings who understand their direct connection with the totality need no institutional intermediaries to access their inner strength. Our limiting paradigms collapse in the face of the fact that we are not humans having a spiritual experience, but spirits having a human experience. This, which sounds so simple, has the potential to completely undermine the status quo. Each individual's choice is clear: remain passive in a supposedly indifferent universe, or awaken as a co-creator of a living and responsive reality. The synchronicities in your personal story are not mere coincidences. They are invitations to recognize your conscious participation in the cosmic tapestry of meaning. The knowledge Blavatsky documented, and which may have contributed to her enigmatic downfall, offers contemporary validation of the truths that wise traditions have preserved through the centuries. This universal field of consciousness that permeates everything is not a mere hypothesis. It is accessible through practices that adjust the relationship between our individual mind and the cosmic mind. These convergent studies show that every thought, intention, and act reverberates in the interconnected fabric of existence, returning to us as synchronistic experiences. The mind is not confined to the skull. It acts as an interactive field embedded in a larger framework. Becoming aware of this does not absolve us of responsibility, rather, it expands it. Every conscious choice affects the entire network. The leaders of power institutions understand these implications very well. That is why they preserve the illusion of separation as a form of domination, disconnecting people from their own depth. But this veil is lifting, and a new paradigm begins to be born, one that recognizes reality as essentially conscious and interlinked. Such a transition is not just a conceptual adjustment, but a true revolution in our self-understanding, comparable to the greatest paradigm shifts in history. The interlacement that Blavatsky investigated is not a peripheral phenomenon, but a fundamental dimension of our own existence, waiting to be recognized. Meditation, for example, helps dissolve the sensory barriers that give us the false impression of separation, facilitating the spontaneous emergence of synchronicities that serve as navigational signals. This new understanding not only transforms the individual, but has the power to influence the collective evolution of consciousness, since every awakened mind strengthens the resonance, inviting others to awaken as well. Never underestimate the power of a small group of dedicated people to change the world. It has always been the engine of great transformations. Far from mere curiosity, synchronicity is a portal to a more connected way of life, full of meaning, which transcends the limitations of the collapsing materialistic paradigm. Unimaginable possibilities open up when we stop seeing reality as fragmented. Every genuine change begins when we understand our role as co-creators, and the only way to contact this divine intelligence is through inner immersion. There are tools that can help, including audio resources to reach higher states of consciousness. If this video makes sense to you, right, it made sense to me. And if you have come this far, comment 100%, so we know you are ready for a renewed perception of reality. This is only the beginning of a profound journey of understanding universal consciousness and the role we play in this interconnected cosmic web.